So today we are going to start talking about a study of history and how do historians study history. And we're going to do that by analyzing a lunchroom fight. Believe me, it does tie in. So consider the following scenario. Imagine that you are the principal of a school and you just found out that there was a fight in the lunchroom during lunch. You've asked many students and teachers who witnessed the fight to write down what they saw and who they think started the fight. Unfortunately, you have received many conflicting accounts that disagree not only as to who started the fight, but also as to who was involved and when the fight even started. It's important to remember that no one is just plain lying. Now, I know that at Pine Lake there aren't many fights, so you might have to draw on what you've seen in the movies or maybe even previous schools, but I would like for you to answer these three questions. The first is, why are there different stories if no one is lying? So in the scenario, it talks about the students and the teachers and how they disagree on who started it or when it started. So jot down your thoughts on why there are different stories if no one is lying. The second question that I want you to answer is, think about the different groups of people that might have seen the fight. So go ahead and jot those down and be specific. So the students, what was their relationship to the person in the fight? Think about the people involved, teachers, who else might be in a lunchroom. So just make a list of those people. Now, the third question. You need to keep those different groups of people in mind and then write down, why might one person's story be more believable than another person's? So again, think about that circle of students around the students fighting. Who is going to be more believable over another person? Why would that person be more believable? So take a moment to write that down. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. So now we need to relate this to the study of history. So historians, when they are looking at artifacts or when they are looking at documents from the time, have to take into account these things: perspective, bias, plausibility, time, physical evidence. So what I would like for you to do now is answer these questions from the perspective of the people in the lunchroom fight. So the first question is related to perspective. So what viewpoint is the person taking? Is, why might people see or remember things differently? So again, thinking back to that fight, who saw it, who was in it, why might they remember it differently? The next one is bias. This is when a person's interpretation is based on ideals, beliefs that they hold. So the bias question is, who has an interest in one student getting in trouble over another student? So look back at your list of who might have seen the fight or who might have been involved in the fight and think about who might be interested in one person getting in trouble over another. The next item is plausibility. So what makes this plausible? What makes it possible? What makes it believable? That's what that word plausibility means. So the question is, what makes one person's story more believable than another person's? So of the people that saw it or were involved, who's going to be our most credible, our most reliable source? The next item is time. The question is, do stories change over time? So let's think about if we were to check back in with the people involved in the fight maybe a week later, is their story going to be different than it was if you interviewed them right after the fight? So first answer, do stories change over time? And then consider the question, this is opinion, but does time make a person's story more or less trustworthy? So be sure to explain your answer to both of those questions. Then the last thing that we have to consider is physical evidence. So consider what type of physical evidence there might be involved in the fight. Things like bruises, scrapes, maybe broken bones, maybe an item was taken. If we think of in the context of historians, they're looking at documents, they're looking at artifacts. But in this case, related to the lunchroom, how might the following physical evidence, so bruises, missing objects, anything else you can think of related to a fight, affect what you believe happened in the fight? So let's say you're the principal, you're trying to make this decision of who started it, when did it start, how will viewing the physical evidence affect what you believe? Alright, now that you've taken the time to answer these questions, let's look at how this relates to what historians do. So how this scenario relates to studying history. So all the things that we saw in piecing together what happened in the lunchroom fight are going to be exactly what a historian does. So we have to think about how were the events interpreted by the different individuals involved and the different witnesses. How were they remembered? Like we talked about the idea of, do stories change over time? How were they explained by the different witnesses and by the participants? And who can we consider to be trustworthy? Are we going to believe the person that is getting in a fight every other week? Or are we going to believe the teacher? So, in the study of history, different people's perspectives have to be considered, their biases. We have to take into account what evidence do we have? Is this person trustworthy? So just like the principal in the story who was trying to piece together what happened in the fight, historians are trying to figure out what happened in the past. Now, tomorrow we're going to get an opportunity to look at a historical event from different perspectives and get to put this into practice with history. So good job today, and we'll work on that tomorrow.